The crack of a gunshot split the dawn air as Olivia Jameson ducked behind the overturned wagon, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The bounty hunters were closing in, and the rising waters of the Sweetwater River cut off her escape to the south. 3 days on the run to clear her father's name, and now she was trapped between bullets and a raging spring flood. Arizona Territory, 1882. The town of Old Tucson lay 30 miles behind her, and freedom, if such a thing existed for the daughter of a man hanged, as a horse thief waited somewhere beyond the churning waters ahead. Olivia pressed her back against the rough wood of the wagon, the worn leather of her father's saddlebags clutched to her chest. Inside lay the proof of his innocence, bank drafts and letters that would exonerate him, if only she could reach the territorial judge in Prescott. Her father, Thomas Jameson, had been a cattle broker, not a thief, and she'd stake her life on proving it. Another shot rang out, splintering wood inches from her head. "Give it up, girl," a gruff voice called. "Ain't nowhere to run now." Olivia peered around the edge of the wagon. The river had swollen overnight with the spring melt, turning what had been a gentle crossing yesterday into a frothing monster of muddy water and debris. Behind her, 3 riders approached slowly, their silhouettes black against the pink-orange glow of sunrise. She had only one horse left, her faithful bay mare Penny, who stood nervously nearby, reins trailing in the mud. The wagon that had served as her shelter belonged to a trader who'd abandoned it when the axle broke 2 days prior. Now it was her only cover, and it wouldn't last long. "I said come on out, girl," the voice came again. "Jed Harker, the leader of the bounty hunters. You're just making things harder on yourself." Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the cold metal of her father's revolver in her hand. 6 bullets, 3 men. Impossible odds, but she'd been facing those her entire life. A new sound caught her attention, hoofbeats, coming fast from the north. A single rider, Harker, and his men turned, momentarily distracted. Olivia seized the opportunity, darting from behind the wagon toward Penny. She grabbed the reins and swung herself into the saddle just as another volley of shots rang out. "Ride," called an unfamiliar voice. This way, through the golden haze of sunrise, Olivia saw him, a tall figure on horseback at the riverbank, waving her toward a point downstream. Without hesitation, she dug her heels into Penny's sides and rode hard, bullets kicking up dirt behind her. The stranger fired back at the bounty hunters, forcing them to take cover. As Olivia approached, she could make out his features, a young man perhaps 5 years her senior, with sun-bronzed skin and a square jaw shadowed with stubble. His eyes caught the dawn light, bright and alert beneath the brim of a well-worn Stetson. "Follow me," he called over the roar of the river. "There's a crossing point just ahead. It's too high," Olivia shouted, pulling alongside him. "We'll drown, trust me," he replied, flashing a confident smile that seemed utterly out of place given their circumstances. "I know these waters better than I know my own name." Without waiting for her response, he urged his chestnut stallion forward into the swirling current. Olivia hesitated only a moment before following, the sound of pursuing hoofbeats making the decision for her. The cold water rose quickly around Penny's legs. Olivia felt the powerful pull of the current, threatening to sweep them away. Ahead, the stranger guided his horse with expert precision, finding invisible footholds beneath the surface. "Stay right behind me," he called. "Step exactly where I step." Olivia followed, fighting to keep Penny calm as the water rose to her knees, then her waist. The river roared in her ears, nearly drowning out the shouts of the bounty hunters who had reached the bank behind them. Halfway across, Penny stumbled. Olivia felt herself sliding from the saddle as the current grabbed at her skirts. A scream tore from her throat as she plunged into the icy water, hands desperately clutching at Penny's mane. Strong fingers closed around her wrist. The stranger had turned back, reaching down from his saddle to catch her. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice steady despite the danger. "I've got you." Water rushed over Olivia's head, then receded as he pulled her up. With tremendous strength, he lifted her from the water and swung her up behind him on his horse. "Penny," Olivia cried, watching her mare struggle against the current. "She'll follow," the stranger assured her. "These horses know what they're doing." True to his word, Penny found her footing and continued forward, following the stallion's path through the treacherous waters. Olivia clung to the stranger's back, shivering violently as the cold morning air cut through her soaked clothing. As they reached the deepest part of the crossing, Harker and his men reached the opposite bank. Shots rang out again, sending up small geysers in the water around them. "Hold tight," the stranger commanded, urging his horse forward with renewed urgency. The river bottom began to rise beneath them. The stranger's horse climbed steadily toward the southern bank, Penny following faithfully behind. As they emerged from the water, Olivia looked back to see Harker attempting the crossing, only to have his horse balk at the rushing current. The stranger didn't slow down. He rode hard along the riverbank until they reached a stand of cottonwoods that provided cover. Only then did he rein in his horse, helping Olivia slide to the ground on trembling legs. "You're safe now," he said, dismounting beside her. "They won't risk that crossing, not with the river this high." Olivia collapsed against the trunk of a tree, her body shaking uncontrollably. The saddlebags, she still had them clutched to her chest, soaked through but intact. "Thank you," she managed through chattering teeth. "You saved my life." He knelt beside her, shrugging off his duster and draping it around her shoulders. Up close, she could see his features clearly. He was handsome in a rugged way, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested a life lived outdoors. "Owen," he said, extending his hand. "Owen Westfield. And you're in quite a bit of trouble from the looks of things." "Olivia Jameson," she replied, taking his hand briefly. "And yes, more trouble than you know." Owen reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small flask, offering it to her. "Whiskey, just a sip to warm you up." Olivia hesitated, then took the flask and swallowed a small amount. The liquid burned down her throat, spreading warmth through her chest. "Now," Owen said, settling back on his heels, "suppose you tell me why 3 armed men are chasing a young woman across the Arizona territory at dawn." Olivia studied him cautiously. "Why should I trust you?" Owen's mouth quirked upward in a half-smile. "Well, I did just risk my hide pulling you out of that river, but fair question." He reached into his shirt and pulled out a deputy's badge. "I work for Sheriff Callahan in Old Tucson. I've been tracking those men since yesterday." "You're a lawman." Olivia's heart sank. Was he just another person hunting her? "I am," Owen confirmed. "But I'm also someone who likes to know both sides of a story before passing judgment. Those men aren't regular deputies, they're bounty hunters. And I'd like to know what's worth enough to have them shooting at a woman." Olivia took another sip from the flask before handing it back. The truth was, she needed help, and this deputy had already saved her life once. "My father was hanged 3 weeks ago for horse theft. Thomas Jameson." Owen's expression darkened. "I heard about that case. Jameson was accused of stealing horses from the Hollister Ranch and selling them across the border." "He didn't do it," Olivia said fiercely. "My father was a cattle broker. He had legitimate business with ranches all over the territory." But Judge Thornton refused to admit the evidence that would have cleared him. She patted the sodden saddlebags. "It's all here: bank drafts, bills of sale, letters from ranchers confirming his business. Everything that proves he was purchasing those horses legally." And let me guess, Owen said. Someone doesn't want you getting those documents to another judge. Robert Hollister, Olivia confirmed. He's the one who accused my father. He's the one who hired those bounty hunters. And I believe he's the one who actually stole those horses. Owen whistled softly. You're making serious accusations against one of the most powerful ranchers in the territory. I know what it sounds like, Olivia replied. But my father is dead because of that man's lies, and I won't let his name stay tarnished. I'm going to Prescott to see Judge Willis. He was a friend of my father's. He'll give these documents a fair review. Owen was quiet for a long moment, his eyes scanning the river where Harker and his men had given up the crossing and were now riding along the bank, likely looking for another way across. Prescott's still 100 miles north, he finally said, and those men won't give up easily. They're being paid too well. He stood and offered his hand to help her up. We need to keep moving. There's a line shack about 10 miles from here where we can dry out and rest the horses. Olivia took his hand, surprised by the decision. You believe me? Owen's expression was unreadable as he checked his horse's girth. Let's just say I've had my own run-ins with Hollister, and I wouldn't put it past him to frame an innocent man. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I'd like to see those documents for myself before I make up my mind. Olivia nodded, relief washing over her despite her caution. Fair enough. Can you ride? Owen asked, nodding toward Penny, who had found a patch of grass and was grazing contentedly. Since I was 5, Olivia replied, gathering Penny's reins. My father raised me on ranches, said I was born in the saddle. Owen helped her mount, then swung up onto his own horse. Stay close. We'll head southeast, away from the river. With luck, we'll lose them in the foothills. As they rode away from the river, the sun rose fully above the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. Olivia cast one last glance back at the churning waters that had nearly claimed her life. Thank you again, she said softly. Not many would have risked that crossing. Owen glanced back at her, the morning light catching in his eyes. I don't much like bullies, Miss Jameson. Never have. As they urged their horses into a steady trot, Olivia found herself studying the broad shoulders of the deputy riding ahead of her. He was a mystery, this man who had appeared out of nowhere at precisely the right moment. But for now, he was her only ally in a territory that suddenly seemed filled with enemies. The line shack was exactly where Owen had said it would be, nestled in a small canyon protected by juniper trees and steep rock walls. It was a simple one-room structure built of rough-hewn logs, with a lean-to for horses and a small stone fireplace. It belongs to the Triple R Ranch, Owen explained as he helped Olivia dismount. They use it during roundup, but this time of year it should be empty. Olivia's muscles ached from the long ride and the morning's ordeal. Her clothes had dried somewhat during their journey, but she still felt chilled to the bone. The promise of shelter, however humble, was deeply welcome. Owen led the horses into the lean-to, unsaddling them efficiently and providing feed from supplies stored in the shack. Olivia gathered what dry kindling she could find and started a small fire in the fireplace, careful to keep the smoke minimal. Harker and his men will be watching for smoke, she said when Owen entered with their saddlebags. Smart thinking, he agreed, setting down the bags. But we're well hidden here, and we need the warmth. He rummaged through his provisions and produced jerky, hardtack, and a tin of coffee. It's not much, but it's food. Olivia's stomach growled at the mention of a meal. She hadn't eaten since the previous morning, too focused on staying ahead of her pursuers. It sounds wonderful, she admitted, accepting a strip of jerky. As she chewed the tough meat, she watched Owen move around the small space with the ease of someone accustomed to making do with little. You seem familiar with this place, she observed. Owen nodded, measuring coffee grounds into a battered pot. I worked for the Triple R before I became a deputy, spent many nights in lined shacks like this one. He glanced around the humble shelter. Not exactly the Palmer House Hotel, but it keeps the rain off your head and the coyotes at bay. It's perfect, Olivia said sincerely. After weeks of running, even this rough shelter felt like luxury. While Owen prepared the coffee, Olivia carefully removed the documents from her father's saddlebags, spreading them near the fire to dry. The water had dampened them, but thankfully the oilskin wrapping had protected them from serious damage. "These are the papers that will clear my father's name," she explained, carefully unfolding a bank draft. "This shows that my father paid Hollister for 20 horses. And here," she pointed to another document, "is the contract for sale to the Mendez Ranch in Sonora. All legal, all above board." Owen knelt beside her, examining the papers with a critical eye. "If these are genuine, they certainly contradict Hollister's testimony. He claimed your father never paid him." "They're genuine," Olivia assured him. "My father kept meticulous records. He had to, dealing with ranchers across the territory." "And you think Hollister sold these same horses twice, once to your father and then again elsewhere?" Olivia nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I think. He sold them to my father, took the money, then reported them stolen and sold them again across the border. Double profit, and my father takes the blame." Owen whistled softly. "That's cold-blooded business, even for Hollister." "You sound like you know him well," Olivia observed. A shadow crossed Owen's face. "Our paths have crossed. Let's just say we have differing opinions on how business should be conducted in the territory." He stood and moved to check the coffee, which had begun to boil. Olivia watched him, sensing there was more to the story but not wanting to press. She had her own secrets, after all. They ate in companionable silence, the crackling fire and the occasional stamp of the horses the only sounds. Outside, the sun climbed toward midday, sending shafts of light through the single small window of the shack. "We should rest here until nightfall," Owen suggested, pouring her a second cup of coffee. "Then ride under cover of darkness. We can make another 20 miles before dawn if the horses hold up. And then there's a small settlement called Cottonwood Springs about 30 miles from here. Friend of mine runs the general store. We can resupply there, maybe get you some dry clothes." Olivia glanced down at her mud-stained riding skirt and jacket. "That obvious, is it?" Owen's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Let's just say you stand out a bit more than is safe for someone being hunted." "I wasn't planning on being chased across the territory," she said defensively. "I thought I could make it to Prescott before Hollister realized what I was doing." "How did he find out?" Olivia's expression darkened. "My father's former clerk, Milton Weaver. He came to our house the day after the hanging, supposedly to offer condolences. I caught him searching my father's office. When I confronted him, he admitted Hollister had promised him a job if he recovered any stolen property from my father's possession. And instead he found the evidence that would exonerate your father," Owen surmised. "Exactly. I managed to get him to leave without the papers, but I knew it wouldn't be long before Hollister sent someone else, so I gathered what I could and left that night." "Brave," Owen commented. "And foolish. You should have gone to the sheriff." "Sheriff Davis?" Olivia scoffed. "He's been in Hollister's pocket for years. He's the one who arrested my father in the first place on nothing more than Hollister's word." She set down her cup with a sharp click. "No, Deputy Westfield, the law in Yavapai County failed my father. I won't make the same mistake." Owen studied her across the fire, his expression thoughtful. "Not all lawmen are corrupt, Miss Jameson." "Perhaps not," she conceded, "but I've seen little evidence to the contrary." A heavy silence fell between them. Olivia immediately regretted her words. This man had saved her life. After all, but pride kept her from apologizing. "Get some rest," Owen finally said, rising to his feet. "I'll keep watch." Olivia wanted to object, but exhaustion was rapidly overtaking her. The events of the morning, combined with days of vigilant travel, had left her bone weary. She arranged her father's coat as a makeshift pillow and lay down near the fire. "Wake me in a few hours," she murmured. "You need rest too." Owen merely nodded, moving to the window where he could survey the approach to the canyon. Despite her intention to remain alert, Olivia fell into a deep sleep almost immediately. Her dreams were a confused jumble of rushing water, her father's face as he stood on the gallows, and the steady grip of Owen Westfield's hand pulling her from the river. When she awoke, shadows had lengthened across the floor of the shack. She sat up quickly, disoriented, to find Owen seated across from her, cleaning his revolver by the light of the dying fire. "How long did I sleep?" she asked, pushing hair from her face. "Most of the day," he replied, not looking up from his task. "You needed it." "You were supposed to wake me," she scolded, embarrassed to have slept while he kept watch. "I managed a nap while you were sleeping," he assured her, though the shadows under his eyes suggested otherwise. "Besides, you're no good to me exhausted. We have hard riding ahead." Olivia stood, stretching muscles stiff from sleep and the hard floor. Her clothes had dried completely, though they were wrinkled and still carried the scent of river mud. She did her best to smooth her appearance, acutely aware of Owen's presence. "There's water in the bucket by the door if you want to wash up," he said, seeming to read her thoughts. "And some food left over from earlier." Olivia thanked him and took the opportunity to refresh herself as best she could with the limited resources. As she splashed cold water on her face, she studied her reflection in the small mirror hanging beside the door. Her normally neat chestnut hair was a tangle of waves around her face, and there were dark smudges beneath her hazel eyes. She looked wild, unkempt, a far cry from the respectable rancher's daughter she'd been just weeks ago. By the time she finished, Owen had packed their belongings and was checking the horses. Night had fallen completely, the only light coming from the banked fire in the shack. "We should move soon," he said when she joined him in the lean-to. "Moon's not up yet. Good time to travel without being spotted." Olivia nodded, helping to saddle Penny. The mare nudged her affectionately, seemingly recovered from the morning's ordeal. "Do you think they're still looking for us?" "Without a doubt," Owen replied grimly. "Harker's not the type to give up easily, especially with Hollister's money on the line." He secured his saddlebags. "But we have one advantage: they don't know where we're headed. They'll likely expect you to continue straight to Prescott. And we're not." Olivia asked in surprise. "Not directly," Owen explained. "We'll head east first through Cottonwood Springs, then north through the high country. It's longer but safer, less traveled." Olivia frowned, calculating the additional time. "That adds days to the journey." "It also keeps you alive," Owen countered firmly. "Hollister has men all over this territory. Our best chance is to stay off the main trails." Though she was reluctant to delay reaching Judge Willis, Olivia had to admit the logic in his plan. "All right," she conceded, "but we don't dawdle. Every day that passes gives Hollister more time to cover his tracks." Owen's expression softened slightly. "We'll move as quickly as is safe, I promise. Justice for your father matters to me too." There was something in his tone that made Olivia look at him sharply. "Why? You didn't know him?" Owen busied himself with a final check of his saddle. "Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to see Robert Hollister face consequences for his actions." Before Olivia could press further, he led his horse out of the lean-to. "We should go. Stay close and follow my lead. The canyon trail is treacherous in the dark." They rode in silence through the night, Owen leading the way with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the terrain. The new moon cast little light, but the stars shone brilliantly in the clear sky, providing just enough illumination to navigate by. Olivia found herself studying Owen's back as he rode ahead of her. He was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve, a lawman who seemed reluctant to involve other authorities, a stranger who had risked his life for her without hesitation. And there was clearly some history between him and Hollister, though he'd been evasive about the details. "You mentioned you worked for the Triple R before becoming a deputy," she said when they paused to rest the horses. "What made you switch to law work?" Owen took a drink from his canteen before answering. "Needed a change. Riding for a ranch is a young man's game." "You're hardly ancient," Olivia observed with a hint of amusement. She guessed he couldn't be more than 28 or 29. The comment drew a small smile from him. "Old enough to know I don't want to be breaking broncos when I'm 40. His expression grew more serious. "Truth is, I saw too many good people get pushed around by men with money and power. Thought maybe wearing a badge would let me even the odds a bit." "Has it?" Olivia asked softly. Owen's gaze drifted to the distant horizon. "Sometimes, not often enough." There was a weight to his words that spoke of disappointment, of battles lost. Olivia found herself wondering what specific injustices he had witnessed or perhaps experienced himself. They continued riding through the night, the landscape gradually changing from rocky canyons to rolling hills covered in scrub and occasional juniper trees. By the time the eastern sky began to lighten, they had covered considerable ground. "There's a creek about a mile ahead," Owen said as dawn approached. "We'll water the horses and rest for a few hours. Can't risk traveling in daylight until we're further from where Harker last saw us." The creek was a welcome sight, a narrow ribbon of clear water flowing between banks lined with cottonwoods. They dismounted in a small clearing, well hidden from any nearby trails. As Olivia led Penny to drink, she noticed Owen scanning their surroundings with unusual intensity. "Do you see something?" she asked, suddenly alert. "Not sure," he replied, his voice low. "Thought I saw dust to the west. Could be nothing, wild horses or cattle, could be riders." Olivia felt her heart quicken. "Harker, can't be sure, but we should move into better cover just in case." He nodded toward a denser stand of trees farther from the creek. "Lead the horses. Try not to leave obvious tracks." They retreated to the trees, carefully brushing away their footprints as they went. Owen positioned them behind a fallen log that offered a view of the clearing while providing cover. "If it is Harker, how would he have found us?" Olivia whispered. "We've been so careful." "Man's a tracker by trade," Owen replied grimly. "And he knows this territory. If he guessed we'd head east instead of north." He fell silent as the unmistakable sound of approaching horses reached them. Moments later, 3 riders entered the clearing by the creek. Olivia recognized Harker immediately, a tall, lean man with a shock of gray hair beneath his hat. With him were the same 2 men who had chased her to the river crossing. "They're here somewhere," Harker said, dismounting to examine the ground. "Horse tracks are fresh." Owen silently drew his revolver, motioning for Olivia to stay down. She gripped her father's gun, her palms sweating against the metal. "Could be anyone," one of Harker's companions objected. "Plenty of folks use this creek." "These are the same horses," Harker insisted, pointing to distinctive hoof prints. "That mare has a chip in her front shoe, same as the girl's horse." Olivia glanced at Penny in alarm. She hadn't noticed the damaged shoe. "They can't have gone far," Harker continued, remounting. "Fan out and search the area. Remember, Hollister wants the girl alive and those documents intact." The men separated, one riding directly toward the stand of trees where Owen and Olivia hid. Owen tensed beside her, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. "If they find us," he breathed, barely audible, "run for the horses. I'll hold them off." Olivia shook her head stubbornly. "I won't leave you. This isn't a debate," he replied sharply. "Those documents are what matters. Get them to Judge Willis." Before she could argue further, a twig snapped nearby. The approaching rider paused, scanning the trees suspiciously. "See something, Taylor?" Harker called from across the clearing. The man named Taylor stood in his stirrups, peering intently toward their hiding place. "Thought I did. Might be nothing." Olivia held her breath, aware that the slightest movement could give them away. Beside her, Owen was completely still, his eyes fixed on the rider. A sudden commotion from the east saved them, the thunder of hooves and the bellow of cattle. A small herd of longhorns burst into the clearing, apparently spooked by something in the brush. "Look out!" Harker shouted as the cattle charged through, forcing the bounty hunters to retreat. Owen seized the opportunity. "Now, to the horses!" They ran, keeping low and using the confusion of the cattle drive to cover their movement. As they reached their mounts, Olivia caught sight of a group of cowboys attempting to control the scattered herd. "This way," Owen directed, leading her away from the creek toward a rocky slope that would be difficult to track across. They rode hard, not slowing until they had put several miles between themselves and the bounty hunters. "That was too close," Olivia said when they finally paused in a sheltered arroyo. "How did they find us?" "They're good at their job," Owen replied grimly. "And we're leaving too obvious a trail." He dismounted, checking his horse for signs of strain from the hard ride. "We need to be smarter." "Split up, maybe. Split up," Olivia echoed in disbelief. "That's your solution." "It makes tactical sense," Owen argued. "They're focused on you and the documents. If we separate, I can lead them away while you continue to Prescott." "Absolutely not," Olivia said firmly. "I'm not leaving you to face them alone." "This isn't about me," Owen insisted. "It's about getting those documents to Judge Willis. And what happens to you if Harker catches you instead of me? Do you think Hollister will be merciful when he discovers you've been helping me?" Owen's jaw tightened. "I can handle myself." "So can I," Olivia countered. "But we're stronger together. 2 guns are better than 1. They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Finally, Owen's expression softened slightly. "You're stubborn, Olivia Jameson." "So my father always said," she replied with the ghost of a smile. "It's how I've survived this long." Owen shook his head, but there was reluctant admiration in his eyes. "All right. Together then, but we need to be more careful. No more creek stops where we leave obvious tracks. And we travel only at night for the next few days." "Agreed," Olivia nodded. "How far to Cottonwood Springs from here?" "About 20 miles east," Owen replied, looking toward the horizon. "We should reach it by tomorrow night if we're careful." They rested through the heat of the day in the shelter of the arroyo, taking turns keeping watch. Olivia used the time to sort through her father's papers again, organizing them for presentation to the judge. Among them, she found a letter she hadn't noticed before, addressed to her father from a man named Marcus Westfield. The name made her pause. Westfield, the same as Owen's surname. She glanced at Owen, who was dozing against his saddle a few feet away. Could it be coincidence? The territory wasn't so large that men couldn't share a surname without being related. Curiosity got the better of her. She carefully unfolded the letter and began to read. "Thomas, I've looked into the matter we discussed. You're right to be concerned. The brand alterations are consistent with theft, not natural wearing as Hollister claims. I've documented the evidence as you requested, but I advise caution. Hollister has powerful friends in the territory. My son returns from Denver next week. He's taken a deputy position in Old Tucson." I've mentioned your concerns to him and he may contact you directly. Watch your back, old friend. Men like Hollister don't appreciate being investigated. Regards, Marcus Westfield. Olivia stared at the letter, then at Owen's sleeping form. Not coincidence at all. Owen was Marcus Westfield's son, and apparently her father had been corresponding with him about Hollister's activities. She carefully returned the letter to its place among the papers, her mind racing. Why hadn't Owen mentioned this connection? Was this why he had appeared at the river crossing at exactly the right moment? Had he been looking for her specifically? When Owen awoke an hour later, Olivia was still pondering these questions. She decided against confronting him immediately. There might be good reason for his secrecy, and they had more pressing concerns. But she would watch him more carefully now, alert for any sign of deception. As dusk approached, they prepared to continue their journey. The terrain ahead was more exposed, with less tree cover and more open-range land. They would need to be even more vigilant to avoid detection. "Stay close," Owen instructed as they mounted. "And if we encounter anyone, let me do the talking." Olivia nodded, though inwardly she bristled at being told what to do. She was no fragile flower needing protection. She had survived 3 weeks on the run before Owen appeared. They rode steadily through the night, keeping to low ground where possible and avoiding ridge lines that would silhouette them against the sky. The stars wheeled overhead, marking the passage of hours as they pushed eastward. Near midnight, they crested a small rise and Owen halted suddenly, raising his hand in warning. Ahead, the glow of a campfire was visible in a small valley. "Riders," he whispered, dismounting. "Could be Harker and his men, could be innocent travelers." "One way to find out," Olivia said, sliding from Penny's back. They left the horses ground tied and crawled to the edge of the rise. Below, 4 men sat around a campfire, rifles close at hand. They weren't Harker's group, but something about their manner, the way they constantly scanned their surroundings, the hushed tone of their conversation suggested they weren't ordinary travelers. "Hollister's men," Olivia whispered. Owen nodded grimly. "Recognized 2 of them from the ranch. He must have sent riders out in all directions. How many men does he have looking for me?" "Hollister runs the biggest spread in the territory," Owen replied. "He can call on 40, maybe 50 hands if needed." The information was sobering. Olivia had known she faced long odds, but hearing the numbers made the challenge seem almost insurmountable. "We'll need to circle around them," Owen decided. "Adds miles to our journey, but we can't risk being spotted." They retreated to their horses and began a wide detour around the camp. The extra miles were frustrating, but Olivia understood the necessity. By dawn, they had successfully bypassed the danger and found shelter in a small box canyon where spring fed a tiny pool of clear water. "We'll rest here today," Owen said as they unsaddled the horses. "With luck, we can reach Cottonwood Springs by tomorrow morning." Olivia nodded, her exhaustion making even simple tasks difficult. They had been riding almost constantly for 2 days, with only brief stops for rest. "Owen," she said as they settled beside the pool with a meager breakfast of jerky and hardtack, "there's something I need to ask you." He looked up, wariness crossing his features. "What is it?" "Why didn't you tell me your father knew mine?" The question clearly caught him off guard. His expression shifted from surprise to resignation. "You found the letter." "Yes, it was among my father's papers." Owen sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I should have told you, I'm sorry." "Why didn't you?" Olivia pressed. "Did you think I wouldn't trust you if I knew?" "Maybe," he admitted. "Or maybe I didn't want to explain why I failed your father." "Failed him? How?" Owen's face darkened with an emotion Olivia couldn't quite identify, grief, perhaps, or guilt. "My father wrote to me about your father's suspicions regarding Hollister." Asked me to look into it, use my position as deputy to investigate quietly. I was going to, but then—" He paused, his jaw tightening. Then word came that Thomas Jameson had been arrested for horse theft. By the time I arrived in Prescott, the trial was already over. He was hanged the next morning. "You were there," Olivia whispered. Owen nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I tried to get a stay of execution, argued that there was evidence that hadn't been considered. Judge Thornton wouldn't hear it. Said the evidence was circumstantial, the testimony against your father too damning. So when you found me at the river—" "I'd been looking for you for weeks," Owen confirmed. "After the hanging, I went to your home in Prescott, but you were already gone. I've been tracking Harker, hoping he would lead me to you." A hint of admiration entered his voice. "You're not easy to find when you don't want to be." Olivia absorbed this information slowly. "Why go to such lengths? You didn't know me or my father personally." "Because I believe in justice," Owen said simply. "And because my father asked me to help, and I was too late. I owe it to him and to your father to make this right." There was sincerity in his words that Olivia couldn't doubt. Whatever his initial reasons for withholding the information, she believed he was telling the truth now. "Thank you for being honest," she said finally, "and for trying to help my father even if it was too late." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Owen replied. "I was afraid. Afraid you'd blame me for not being fast enough to save him." The vulnerability in his admission touched Olivia deeply. "The only person to blame is Robert Hollister," she said firmly, "and he will answer for what he's done." Owen met her gaze then, and something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or a shared resolve. In that moment, Olivia felt less alone than she had since her father's death. They rested through the day, taking turns keeping watch while the other slept. By nightfall, they were ready to continue their journey to Cottonwood Springs. The settlement came into view shortly after dawn, a small collection of buildings nestled in a valley where several springs created a verdant oasis in the otherwise arid landscape. From their vantage point on a ridge overlooking the town, Olivia could make out a general store, a blacksmith shop, a small church, and perhaps 24 modest homes. "Not much to look at," Owen commented, "but it's a good place. People here mind their own business. And your friend?" "The storekeeper, Samuel Parker, fought with my father in the war. We can trust him." They approached the settlement cautiously, staying off the main trail until they were certain no bounty hunters or Hollister's men were visible in the town. When the way seemed clear, they rode directly to the general store, a 2-story building with living quarters above the shop. A bell jingled as they entered. The store was well stocked with supplies, canned goods, tools, fabric, and other necessities for frontier life. Behind the counter stood a heavy-set man with a full beard and kind eyes. "Owen Westfield," he exclaimed, coming around the counter with hand extended. "Been too long, son." "Sam," Owen greeted him warmly, shaking his hand. "Good to see you." Samuel's attention turned to Olivia, curiosity evident in his expression. "And who might this be?" "Olivia Jameson," Owen replied, his tone growing more serious. "Thomas Jameson's daughter." Recognition dawned in Samuel's eyes. "Thomas Jameson. I heard about what happened. Terrible business." He looked more closely at Olivia. "You have his eyes, miss." "Thank you," Olivia said softly, touched by the observation. "Did you know my father?" "Met him a few times when he came through buying cattle," Samuel confirmed. "Honest man by my reckoning. Never believed what they said about him." The bell jingled again as a customer entered. Samuel glanced toward the door, then lowered his voice. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation upstairs. My wife's visiting her sister, so I have the place to myself." He led them through a door behind the counter and up a narrow staircase to a comfortable apartment. Once they were settled in the small parlor, Samuel brought coffee and listened intently as Owen explained their situation. "So you're headed to Prescott to see Judge Willis," Samuel summarized when Owen finished, "and Hollister has half the territory looking for you." "That about covers it," Owen agreed. "We need supplies, fresh horses if you have them, and a safe place to rest before we continue north." "You'll have all three," Samuel assured them. "I keep a couple of good mounts in the stable behind the store. Not as fine as those you're riding, but fresh legs will serve you better than tired ones, no matter how good the stock." "We're grateful, Mr. Parker," Olivia said sincerely. "Sam, please," he insisted. "Any daughter of Thomas Jameson is welcome in my home." He stood, straightening his vest. "Now, you both look like you could use a proper meal and some rest. I'll see to the horses and mind the store." "There's a spare bedroom through that door, Miss Jameson, and Owen can take the sofa here." After Samuel returned to the store, Olivia gratefully accepted the opportunity to wash away days of trail dust in the privacy of the spare room. Samuel had provided a basin of hot water, soap, and towels, simple luxuries that felt extravagant after their journey. She also found a clean dress laid out on the bed, likely belonging to Samuel's wife. Though slightly large for her frame, it was far better than her travel-worn clothing. She changed gratefully, feeling more human than she had in days. When she emerged, she found Owen similarly refreshed, his face clean-shaven and his hair damp from washing. He had changed into a fresh shirt provided by Samuel, and the transformation was striking. Without the trail dust and stubble, he looked younger, less weathered by the harsh territory. "You clean up well, Deputy," Olivia observed with a small smile. Owen's eyes widened slightly at her appearance, then quickly returned to a neutral expression. "As do you, Miss Jameson." Samuel returned with a pot of stew and fresh bread, and they ate like the starving travelers they were. Olivia couldn't remember when food had tasted so good, perhaps, because it was the first meal in weeks she hadn't eaten while looking over her shoulder for pursuers. "I've been thinking about your route to Prescott," Samuel said as they finished eating. "The main road north is too dangerous. Hollister will have men watching it for sure." "That's our thinking as well," Owen agreed. "There's an old Apache trail through the mountains," Samuel continued. "It's rough going in places, but it will keep you well away from the usual routes. I can mark it on your map." "How much longer will it take?" Olivia asked, conscious of every passing day. 3, maybe 4 days, Samuel estimated. "Longer than the main road, but safer." "We'll take it," Owen decided. "Better to arrive late than not at all." Samuel nodded approvingly. "Smart choice. Now you both should get some rest while you can. I'll wake you if there's any trouble." Olivia retreated to the spare bedroom, leaving Owen and Samuel deep in conversation in the parlor. Despite her exhaustion, sleep proved elusive. Her mind kept returning to the letter from Marcus Westfield, to Owen's confession about searching for her, to the dangerous journey still ahead. And beneath these practical concerns, she found herself dwelling on other, more confusing thoughts: the way Owen had looked at her when she emerged in clean clothes, the steadiness of his hand as he had pulled her from the river, the growing sense that she could trust him with more than just her safety. Olivia had never been one for romantic notions. Her father had raised her to be practical, independent, focused on the ranch operations rather than social niceties. Yet here she was, thinking about a man's eyes when she should be planning their next move. "Foolishness," she muttered to herself, turning restlessly on the unfamiliar bed. Owen Westfield was a temporary ally, nothing more. Once they reached Prescott and presented the evidence to Judge Willis, their paths would diverge. She would focus on clearing her father's name and rebuilding their ranch, while Owen would return to his duties in Old Tucson. This sobering thought finally allowed her to drift into sleep, though her dreams were troubled by rushing rivers and the echo of gunshots. She awoke to a gentle knock on the door. Outside, the light had shifted to the golden hue of late afternoon. "Miss Jameson," Samuel's voice called softly, "there's something you should see." Alarmed, Olivia quickly rose and straightened her borrowed dress before opening the door. Samuel stood in the hallway, his expression grave. "What is it?" she asked. "Riders just came into town," he explained, leading her to the parlor where Owen already stood by the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. "Hollister's men, by the look of them." Olivia joined Owen at the window. In the street below, 6 men on horseback had gathered in front of the saloon across from the general store. Even from this distance, she recognized the distinctive brand on their horses, the Circle H of Hollister Ranch. "They're showing your likeness around," Samuel continued, "asking if anyone's seen a young woman matching your description." "Will anyone talk?" Olivia asked anxiously. Samuel shook his head confidently. "Folks here don't much care for Hollister. His men roughed up the blacksmith's son last year, accused him of stealing a horse. Boy was innocent, but Hollister never apologized." He checked his pocket watch. "Still, we should get you out of town before dark. They're likely to search buildings if they get suspicious." "We'll leave within the hour," Owen decided, turning from the window. "Back way if possible." "There's an alley behind the store," Samuel confirmed. "I've already moved your new horses to the livery at the edge of town. Old Hank, who runs it, is deaf as a post and blind in one eye, but loyal as they come. He'll have them ready." Olivia returned to the bedroom to change back into her riding clothes, which Samuel's wife had washed and mended during the day. As she dressed, she could hear Owen and Samuel speaking in low voices in the parlor, discussing routes and provisions. When she rejoined them, Samuel had laid out supplies on the table: ammunition, dried foods, medical supplies, and a small but accurate map of the territory with the Apache Trail clearly marked. "These should see you to Prescott," he said, packing the items efficiently into saddlebags. "I've included extra coffee. Owen here gets mighty disagreeable without it." Owen accepted the good-natured ribbing with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "One of my few vices, I'm afraid." "I'll remember that," Olivia said, finding herself returning his smile despite the tension of their situation. Samuel handed her a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. "Some clothes for you, miss. My wife's a bit larger, but I adjusted these as best I could." "Riding split skirt and a couple of shirts, more practical than what you've been wearing." Touched by his thoughtfulness, Olivia thanked him sincerely. "Your kindness won't be forgotten, Mr. Parker." "Sam," he corrected gently. "And no thanks needed. Your father was a good man. Helping his daughter is an honor." He glanced out the window again. "Hollister's men are still at the saloon. Best time to slip out would be now, while they're occupied with whiskey and conversation." They followed Samuel down a back staircase that led directly to the alley behind the store. The evening shadows provided additional cover as they made their way cautiously toward the livery stable at the eastern edge of town. As promised, Hank had their horses saddled and waiting 2 sturdy bay geldings that looked fresh and trail-ready. After transferring their belongings to the new mounts, Owen and Olivia said their goodbyes to Samuel. "Godspeed," the storekeeper said, clasping Owen's hand firmly. "And Owen, your father would be proud of what you're doing." Owen's expression tightened briefly with emotion. "Thank you, Sam, for everything." "Just see justice done," Samuel replied solemnly. "That's thanks enough." They rode out of Cottonwood Springs as the first stars appeared, taking a little used trail that eventually connected with the Apache path Samuel had marked on their map. The new horses proved to be steady and sure-footed, maintaining a good pace even as the trail began to climb into more rugged terrain. "Samuel is a good friend," Olivia observed after they had put several miles between themselves and the settlement. "One of the best," Owen agreed. "Saved my father's life during the war. They've been like brothers ever since." "He seemed to think highly of my father as well." Owen nodded. "Thomas Jameson had a reputation for fair dealing throughout the territory. That's why his conviction surprised so many people." "Not those who knew Hollister's influence," Olivia said bitterly. "Money speaks louder than truth in too many courtrooms." "Not in Judge Willis's," Owen assured her. "He's known for his independence. If your evidence is solid, he'll act on it." "And then what?" Olivia asked, the question that had been troubling her for weeks finally surfacing. "Even if we clear my father's name, it won't bring him back. Hollister will probably pay a fine, perhaps serve some time, but my father will still be gone." Owen was quiet for a long moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Justice isn't always perfect," he finally said, "but it matters. Your father's reputation will be restored. The ranch can be yours again, free of the cloud that hangs over it now. And Hollister will lose the one thing he values most, his standing in the territory." "Is that enough?" Olivia wondered aloud. "I don't know," Owen admitted, "but it's what we can do. Sometimes that has to be enough." His honesty was refreshing. No platitudes, no empty assurances that everything would feel right again. Just a simple acknowledgement of the limitations of justice and the importance of pursuing it anyway. They rode in thoughtful silence as the trail wound higher into the mountains. The Apache path was narrow but clearly defined, suggesting regular use despite its remote location. Pine and juniper trees replaced the desert scrub of the lowlands, their scent sharp and clean in the cooling night air. "We should reach the high pass by morning," Owen said, consulting Samuel's map by starlight. "After that, it's a 2-day descent to the Verde Valley, then another day to Prescott." "3 more days," Olivia murmured. "It seems both impossibly long and remarkably close." Owen glanced at her. "Having second thoughts?" "No," she said firmly, "just preparing myself for whatever comes." He nodded, understanding. "One step at a time. First, we get through these mountains safely." They continued through the night, stopping occasionally to rest the horses and consult the map. The trail grew steadily steeper and more challenging, requiring their full attention to navigate safely in the darkness. Near dawn, they reached a natural resting place, a small plateau with a spring and enough grass for the horses to graze. The higher elevation brought cooler temperatures, a welcome change from the desert heat they had endured for days. "We should rest here for a few hours," Owen suggested, dismounting stiffly. "The horses need it, and so do we." Olivia agreed, her own muscles aching from the long night's ride. They unsaddled the horses and set up a small camp sheltered by boulders that would hide any fire from distant observers. Owen prepared coffee while Olivia laid out some of the food Samuel had provided: jerky, dried apples, and hard biscuits. It was simple fare, but after weeks on the run, it felt like a feast. As they ate, the eastern sky lightened, revealing the breathtaking landscape around them. From their elevated position, they could see for miles the desert they had crossed stretched out below like a vast, golden sea, while ahead, the mountains rose in rugged, pine-covered splendor. "It's beautiful," Olivia said softly, momentarily forgetting the danger that had driven them to this remote spot. "It is," Owen agreed, his eyes on the horizon. "My father used to say God created the territory to remind men how small they really are. Wise man, your father. He is that." Owen poured her more coffee. "He lives in Colorado now, retired from ranching after my mother passed." "I'm sorry about your mother," Olivia said sincerely. Owen acknowledged her sympathy with a nod. It was some years ago. Influenza took her the winter I turned 18. He paused, seeming to debate whether to continue. That's when I left home, signed on with a cattle drive headed south. Ended up working for the Triple R for a time. Hollister's ranch? Olivia asked in surprise. This was before Hollister owned it, Owen clarified. Old man Reeves ran it then, fair employer, honest man. When he died, his daughter married Hollister, who took over operations. His expression darkened. Things changed quickly after that. How so? Hollister's interested in power, not ranching. He sees cattle as a means to an end, the end being control of the territory. He started buying up smaller ranches, sometimes using questionable methods to force sales. Like accusing owners of horse theft, Olivia suggested. Exactly like that, Owen confirmed. Your father wasn't the first, just the most prominent. Most others gave in and sold out rather than face trial. But my father fought back. He had evidence, Owen said, and principles. A dangerous combination when dealing with a man like Hollister. Olivia sipped her coffee thoughtfully. Tell me about your father, she requested. He and my father were friends, yet I never heard his name until I found that letter. Owen leaned back against his saddle. Marcus Westfield is a careful man. Their friendship was discreet. Your father was investigating Hollister, and my father was helping. Better for both if Hollister didn't know they were connected. How did they meet? Cattle business, initially. My father ran a small spread near Flagstaff before retiring. They crossed paths at auctions, developed a respect for each other. Owen smiled slightly. Both stubborn men with strong ideas about right and wrong. That sounds like my father, Olivia agreed, feeling a pang of grief at the memory. He used to say a man's word was his bond, and without it, he was nothing. A philosophy that's becoming rare in the territory, Owen observed. Too many men like Hollister who see promises as flexible things, to be kept only when convenient. The conversation lapsed into comfortable silence as they watched the sunrise complete its transformation of the landscape. Despite the circumstances, Olivia found herself experiencing a moment of peace, the first since her father's death. We should get some sleep, Owen finally suggested. I'll take first watch. Wake me in 4 hours, Olivia instructed, settling herself on her bedroll. And Owen, thank you for telling me about your father, about your connection to mine. It helps to know my father had true friends. He did, Owen assured her. More than you know. Olivia closed her eyes. The combination of exhaustion and the quieting of some of her doubts about Owen allowing sleep to come quickly. When she woke, the sun was high overhead, casting short shadows across their camp. Owen sat nearby, cleaning his revolver with methodical precision. You didn't wake me, she accused, sitting up. You needed the sleep, he replied unapologetically. Besides, it's been quiet, not even a bird out of place. Olivia couldn't argue with his logic, though she made a mental note not to let him take on more than his share of their burdens going forward. They broke camp in the early afternoon, continuing along the Apache Trail as it wound through the mountains. The path grew increasingly narrow, hugging cliffsides with steep drops to one side. In places, they had to dismount and lead the horses carefully over particularly treacherous sections. The Apache used these trails to evade the cavalry, Owen explained as they navigated a difficult passage. They could move entire families through these mountains without being detected. Clever people, Olivia observed, gaining new respect for the native inhabitants of the territory. And determined, Owen agreed, much like someone else I know. The comment, delivered with a sidelong glance that held both amusement and admiration, brought unexpected warmth to Olivia's cheeks. She busied herself with checking Penny's footing to hide her reaction. By nightfall, they had crossed the high pass and begun their descent toward the Verd Valley. They made camp in a protected hollow surrounded by pine trees, their branches providing natural concealment. As they sat beside their small fire, Owen shared stories of his time as a deputy in Old Tucson, the colorful characters who passed through the frontier town, the challenges of maintaining order in a place where many came specifically to escape it. Olivia found herself laughing at his descriptions, momentarily forgetting the serious purpose of their journey. In turn, she told him about growing up on her father's ranch, learning to ride almost before she could walk, helping with cattle drives by the time she was 12, keeping the books by 15 when her father's eyesight began to fail. "He was so proud of you," Owen said when she finished. "In his letters to my father, he always mentioned how capable you were, how you could run the ranch as well as any man." "He said that?" Olivia asked, touched by the revelation. "Often," Owen confirmed. "He worried about you, of course wanted you to have more options than just the ranch life. But he never doubted your abilities." "I miss him," Olivia said simply, the words inadequate to express the hollow ache that had become her constant companion since the hanging. "I know," Owen replied softly, and somehow, looking into his eyes, Olivia believed that he truly did understand. The next 2 days passed without incident as they continued their journey through the mountains and into the Verd Valley. The land gradually opened up, the dense pine forests giving way to rolling hills covered with grass and scattered oak trees. They began to see occasional signs of settlement, distant ranch houses, fenced fields, the smoke of cooking fires. "We're getting close to civilization again," Owen observed as they made camp on the evening of their second day in the valley. "We'll need to be more careful from here on." "How far to Prescott?" Olivia asked, studying the map by firelight. "About 20 miles north," Owen estimated. "We could reach it by mid-morning tomorrow if we start early." 20 miles. After weeks of running, hundreds of miles traveled in fear and secrecy, the end of their journey seemed impossibly close. "What will you do?" Olivia asked suddenly. "After we reach Judge Willis, I mean." Owen looked up from the fire, seemingly caught off guard by the question. "I haven't thought that far ahead," he admitted. "Return to Old Tucson eventually, I suppose. Sheriff Callahan is probably wondering where I've disappeared to." "You didn't tell him you were looking for me." "I told him I was tracking Harker on suspicion of illegal bounty hunting," Owen explained. "Which isn't entirely untrue. But no, I didn't mention you specifically. Fewer people who knew, the better." Olivia nodded, understanding, though she felt a curious disappointment at the thought of Owen simply returning to his previous life once their mission was complete. She had grown accustomed to his steady presence, his quiet competence, the way his rare smiles transformed his serious face. "And you?" Owen asked, interrupting her thoughts. "What will you do after you've cleared your father's name?" "I hadn't thought much beyond that either," Olivia confessed. "Rebuild the ranch, I suppose, if I can. It's all I know." "Is it what you want?" The question was simple, but it struck Olivia with unexpected force. In her determination to clear her father's name, she hadn't considered what she herself might want for her future. "I don't know," she said honestly. "The ranch was my father's dream. I loved it because he did, because it was our home, but now it's tied to painful memories," Owen finished for her. "Yes," she agreed, grateful for his understanding. "Perhaps I'll sell it, start fresh somewhere else. Colorado, maybe, or California." "Both fine places," Owen said, his expression unreadable in the firelight. "You do well wherever you decided to settle." Something in his tone made Olivia wonder if there was more he wanted to say, but the moment passed, and they soon turned their attention to planning the final leg of their journey to Prescott. They broke camp well before dawn, determined to reach the town by mid-morning as Owen had suggested. As they rode through the gradually lightening landscape, Olivia felt a growing sense of anticipation mingled with apprehension. So much depended on Judge Willis's reception of the evidence, her father's reputation, her own future, possibly even Owen's safety once his role in helping her became known. "Nervous?" Owen asked, correctly reading her tense posture. "A little," she admitted. "What if Judge Willis isn't as honest as we hope? What if Hollister has gotten to him too?" "Willis and Hollister have been adversaries for years," Owen assured her. "The judge has thrown out more than one case Hollister tried to push through his court. If anyone in the territory will give your evidence a fair hearing, it's Willis." His confidence was reassuring. As they rode on, the land became more populated. Small farms dotted the landscape. A stagecoach road appeared and ran parallel to their trail for several miles, and occasionally they passed other travelers who nodded greetings but asked no questions. It was nearly midday when they crested a final ridge and Prescott came into view below them, a substantial town of several thousand inhabitants, with proper streets, brick buildings, and a territorial courthouse that dominated the central square. "Home," Olivia murmured, the sight stirring complex emotions. She had left this place in darkness and fear. Returning felt both triumphant and surreal. "We should approach carefully," Owen cautioned. "Hollister may have men watching the main roads." They skirted the town to the east, approaching from a less traveled direction. As they rode, Owen outlined his plan. "We'll go directly to Judge Willis's home rather than the courthouse," he explained. "Less public, less chance of being spotted. I know where he lives, a house on the western edge of town." The plan made sense to Olivia. They continued their circuitous approach, finally entering Prescott through a quiet residential neighborhood where large homes sat on generous lots, many with views of the distant mountains. "There," Owen said, nodding toward a two-story house with wide verandas and well-tended gardens. "That's the judge's residence." They dismounted at the gate, tying their horses to a hitching post. Olivia clutched her father's saddlebags tightly, the documents inside representing weeks of danger and sacrifice. A housekeeper answered Owen's knock, her expression suspicious, until he explained they had urgent business with the judge on a legal matter. After a brief consultation inside, they were shown to a study where Judge Willis awaited them. Amos Willis was a tall, lean man in his 60s, with a shock of white hair and penetrating blue eyes that seemed to evaluate them instantly. He stood beside a large desk covered with legal papers, his expression stern but not unwelcoming. "Deputy Westfield," he acknowledged Owen with a nod. "It's been some time, and you must be Thomas Jameson's daughter. I was sorry to hear of your father's passing." "Thank you, Your Honor," Olivia replied, her throat suddenly tight. "That's actually why we've come." "So I gathered," the judge said, gesturing for them to sit. "Mrs. Perkins mentioned something about evidence." Owen deferred to Olivia, who carefully removed the documents from the saddlebags and laid them on the judge's desk. "These papers prove my father's innocence, Your Honor," she explained, her voice growing steadier as she spoke. "Bank drafts showing payment to Robert Hollister for the horses he claimed were stolen. Contracts for their legitimate sale. Letters confirming the transactions." Judge Willis picked up the documents, examining them with the careful attention of a man accustomed to evaluating evidence. His expression remained neutral, but Olivia thought she detected a glimmer of interest as he reviewed the papers. "These appear to be genuine," he said finally, "but I'm sure you understand I'll need to verify their authenticity." The bank drafts in particular will need to be confirmed with the institutions involved. Of course, Your Honor, Olivia agreed. We want the truth to be established beyond any doubt. The judge set the papers down and studied them both. I must ask, how did you come by these documents? And why bring them to me rather than presenting them in open court? Owen explained the circumstances: Hollister's attempts to recover the papers, the bounty hunters, their journey from Old Tucson to Prescott. The judge listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grave. These are serious allegations against a prominent citizen, he said when Owen finished. If what you say is true, Robert Hollister is guilty not only of perjury but potentially of conspiracy to commit murder. We understand the gravity of the situation, Your Honor, Owen replied. That's why we came directly to you. Judge Willis nodded thoughtfully. You were right to do so. If Hollister is as determined to suppress this evidence as you suggest, presenting it publicly before its verification would be dangerous for all involved. He gathered the documents carefully. I will review these thoroughly and take appropriate action. In the meantime, I suggest you both remain out of sight. We had planned to find lodging at the Arizona Hotel, Owen said. Too public, the judge countered immediately. Hollister owns interests in most of the hotels in town. I would offer my own home, but that too might draw unwanted attention. He considered for a moment. There's a small property on the outskirts of town, a cottage that belonged to my late sister. It's currently vacant but habitable. You'll be safe there while I verify these documents. Olivia felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, Your Honor. We're in your debt. Don't thank me yet, Miss Jameson, the judge cautioned. I've made no determination regarding these papers. Justice requires thorough investigation, not hasty judgment, a principle that seems to have been forgotten in your father's case. His expression softened slightly. But I give you my word that I will examine this evidence with the care it deserves. It was as much as they could hope for. The judge gave them directions to the cottage and advised them to purchase supplies discreetly, avoiding the busier establishments in town where they might be recognized. As they prepared to leave, the judge addressed one final question to Owen. Does Sheriff Callahan know you're involved in this matter, Deputy? No, Your Honor, Owen admitted. I've been acting, unofficially. The judge raised an eyebrow but made no further comment. I'll send word when I've completed my review. 2 days, perhaps 3. Try not to draw attention to yourselves in the meantime. They thanked him again and departed, both feeling a curious mixture of relief and renewed tension. The documents were now in capable hands, but their safety remained precarious until the judge reached his conclusions. Following Judge Willis's directions, they found the cottage without difficulty, a small but well-built structure set among pine trees about a mile from town. It had clearly been unoccupied for some time, but was clean and furnished with simple, sturdy pieces. Not exactly the Arizona Hotel, Owen commented as they explored the 2-room dwelling, but it has its charms. It's perfect, Olivia declared, running a hand over the smooth wood of a rocking chair beside the stone fireplace. After weeks of sleeping rough, this feels like a palace. They settled in quickly, Owen tending to the horses in the small stable behind the cottage while Olivia assessed their supplies. A trip into town for provisions would be necessary, but they decided to wait until dusk when there would be fewer people about. As the afternoon lengthened into evening, a strange calm descended on them both. After weeks of constant movement and vigilance, the sudden stillness felt almost unnatural. Olivia found herself at loose ends, uncertain what to do with herself now that their immediate goal had been achieved. It feels odd, doesn't it? Owen observed, seeming to read her thoughts as he built a fire in the fireplace. Not running, not planning the next move. Very odd, Olivia agreed, settling into the rocking chair. I keep expecting to hear hoofbeats approaching or gunshots in the distance. Old habits, Owen said with a slight smile. They'll fade in time. But would they? Olivia wondered. How long before she could hear a horse approaching without tensing or sleep through the night without waking at every sound? How long before the hanging of her father ceased to be the first thing she thought of each morning? As if sensing her troubled thoughts, Owen spoke again. You've shown remarkable courage these past weeks, Olivia. Your father would be proud. I hope so, she said softly. I hope he would think it was worth it. The truth is always worth it, Owen replied with quiet conviction, even when it comes at a high cost. Olivia studied him in the growing firelight, struck by how much her perception of him had changed since their first meeting at the river crossing. What had begun as cautious gratitude had evolved into deep respect, and something more, a connection she had not expected to form amidst such dangerous circumstances. What will you do? She asked, returning to the question she had raised the previous night. Truly, after this is resolved. Will you go back to being a deputy in Old Tucson? Owen prodded the fire thoughtfully before answering. I'm not sure that's possible now. Once Hollister learns I helped you, my effectiveness as a deputy there will be compromised. He glanced up at her. But there are other towns, other places that need good lawmen. Such as, I've had offers from Silver City in New Mexico Territory. The mining boom there has created a need for experienced deputies. He shrugged. Or I might return to ranching. I still have some savings, enough for a small spread perhaps. You'd prefer that? Olivia asked, curious about what he truly wanted for himself. There's an appeal to it, Owen admitted. A piece of land that's yours, building something lasting. He smiled ruefully. My father always said I was better with cattle than with people anyway. I don't believe that, Olivia countered. You have a way with people, a directness they respond to. I've seen it. Owen seemed embarrassed by the observation. Maybe. But there's a simplicity to ranch life that has its attractions, especially after seeing the complexities of law enforcement in the territory. I understand that, Olivia said, thinking of her own uncertain future. The ranch was always straightforward hard work, but honest work with tangible results. Exactly, Owen agreed, looking relieved that she comprehended his perspective. Though I imagine a woman with your intelligence and determination could succeed at whatever you chose to pursue. The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, brought warmth to Olivia's cheeks. Thank you, she said softly. Though at the moment my ambitions extend only as far as a hot bath and a proper meal. Owen laughed, the sound rich and unexpected in the quiet cottage. Reasonable ambitions under the circumstances. The bath might be a challenge, but I think we can manage the meal. I'll head into town for supplies. I'll come with you, Olivia decided, rising from the chair. Two can carry more than one, and I'm tired of hiding. Though Owen looked like he wanted to object, he merely nodded. Stay close, and if you see anyone who might recognize you. I know, Olivia assured him. I've been avoiding recognition for weeks, remember. They rode into Prescott as dusk settled over the town, keeping to side streets and avoiding the busier central square. At a small general store on the edge of town, they purchased the essentials: food, coffee, soap, and a few other necessities that would see them through their wait for Judge Willis's decision. The town was quieter than Olivia remembered, the streets less crowded. Perhaps it was simply the hour, or perhaps the recent drought had affected business. Whatever the reason, they completed their errand without incident and returned to the cottage as full darkness descended. Over a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits, they spoke of lighter matters: childhood memories, favorite books, places they had seen in their travels through the territory. It was strange how normal it felt, sitting across the table from this man who had been a stranger just days ago. "You mentioned California earlier," Owen said as they finished eating. "Is that where you'd go if you sold the ranch?" Olivia considered the question. "Perhaps. I've heard it's beautiful orchards and vineyards along the coast, good climate." "It is beautiful," Owen confirmed. "I drove cattle there once years ago. The land around Santa Barbara, particularly green hills rolling down to the ocean." "You've seen the ocean?" Olivia asked, intrigued. She had read about it, of course, but never ventured beyond the territory's borders. "Several times," Owen nodded. "It's humbling. Makes you realize how small we all are in the grand scheme of things. Like the mountains," Olivia suggested, recalling his father's words. "Similar but different too. The mountains are solid, unchanging. The ocean is always in motion, never the same from one moment to the next." His expression grew distant, as if seeing it again in memory. "I think you'd like it. Perhaps I'll find out someday," Olivia said, feeling a sudden yearning for new horizons, new beginnings. They cleared the dishes together, falling into an easy rhythm as if they had shared such domestic tasks many times before. It struck Olivia how comfortable she felt in Owen's presence, a comfort she had not expected to find with anyone after her father's death. As they finished, Owen glanced toward the window. "It's getting late. You should take the bedroom. I'll be fine out here by the fire." Olivia hesitated, reluctant to end their conversation but aware of the propriety he was attempting to maintain. "Thank you. Though after sleeping under the stars for so long, I almost feel strange having walls around me." "You'll adjust," Owen assured her with a small smile. "Faster than you might think." She nodded, gathering her few belongings. At the bedroom door, she paused and looked back at him. "Owen, thank you. Not just for helping me get here, but for believing in my father's innocence when so many others didn't." Owen's expression softened in the firelight. "Your father was a good man, Olivia. The territory needs more like him, not fewer. What happened to him was wrong. Helping you set it right is the least I could do." Something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, made Olivia wonder if there was more he wanted to say. But the moment passed, and she retreated to the bedroom with a quiet good night. Sleep came more easily than she had expected. The comfort of a real bed and the security of the cottage's walls combining with her physical exhaustion to pull her quickly into dreamless rest. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet movement in the main room. For a disorienting moment, she thought she was back on her father's ranch, that the past weeks had been nothing but a terrible dream. Then reality reasserted itself, and she remembered where she was and why. Olivia dressed quickly in the clothes Samuel Parker had provided, appreciating anew the practical split riding skirt and sturdy blouse that allowed for ease of movement. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Owen by the fireplace, where he had cooked a simple breakfast of flapjacks and bacon. "Good morning," he greeted her, looking surprisingly rested himself despite having slept on the floor. "Thought you might appreciate something more substantial than jerky and hardtack for a change." "It smells wonderful," Olivia said sincerely, accepting the plate he offered. The normalcy of the moment breakfast in a proper dwelling, sitting at a table instead of on the ground, felt almost surreal after weeks of fugitive existence. They ate in comfortable silence, both seemingly content to enjoy the simple pleasure of a hot meal without immediate danger pressing upon them. Afterward, they faced the question of how to spend the day while waiting for word from Judge Willis. "We should remain close to the cottage," Owen advised. "The judge said it might be 2 or 3 days before he completes his review. In the meantime, the less we're seen in town, the better." Olivia agreed, though the prospect of more waiting tested her patience. They had been in motion for so long that stillness felt unnatural, almost threatening. The day passed slowly. Owen repaired a loose shutter and chopped wood for the fireplace, while Olivia cleaned the cottage and mended tears in their travel-worn clothing. They spoke little, each absorbed in their tasks and their own thoughts about what might come next. By afternoon, restlessness had overtaken them both. Owen suggested a short ride to stretch the horses' legs, keeping to the wooded areas around the cottage where they would be unlikely to encounter others. The air was clear and cool, the pine-scented breeze a welcome change from the dusty trails they had been traveling. They rode side by side, allowing the horses to set an easy pace through the dappled forest light. "It's peaceful here," Olivia observed, feeling some of her tension ease as they rode. "I can see why the judge's sister chose this location." "It suits you," Owen remarked, then looked slightly embarrassed by the comment. "Does it?" Olivia asked, curious about his perception. He gestured vaguely at their surroundings. "The quiet strength of it, not showy but substantial, enduring." His eyes met hers briefly before returning to the trail ahead. "Like you." The unexpected comparison touched Olivia deeply. Few people in her life had looked beyond her practical exterior to see the person beneath. Her father had understood her, of course, but since his death, she had felt profoundly alone in the world. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing he would understand that her gratitude extended far beyond the compliment itself. They continued their ride in companionable silence, eventually circling back toward the cottage as the afternoon light began to wane. As they approached, Owen suddenly raised a hand in warning, halting both horses. "Someone's been here," he said quietly, nodding toward the cottage where a piece of paper had been affixed to the door. They dismounted cautiously, Owen drawing his revolver as they approached. The paper proved to be a note held in place by a small nail. Owen removed it and read aloud, "Deputy Westfield and Miss Jameson, please join me at my residence this evening at 8 o'clock. Come discreetly. I have completed my review of the documents. Judge A. Willis." Olivia felt her heart rate increase. "He's reached a decision already." "Apparently," Owen confirmed, checking his pocket watch. "It's just past 5 now. We have time to prepare." They spent the next few hours in tense anticipation, speaking little as they readied themselves for what might be a pivotal meeting. Olivia changed into her cleanest clothes and arranged her hair as neatly as possible with the limited resources available. Owen shaved carefully and brushed the trail dust from his coat. At 7:30, they set out for the judge's residence, riding at a modest pace to avoid drawing attention. Night had fallen completely by the time they arrived, the streets of Prescott illuminated by gas lamps that cast pools of yellow light at regular intervals. The judge's housekeeper admitted them immediately, showing them to the same study where they had met with Willis the day before. This time, however, the judge was not alone. A second man rose as they entered, tall and distinguished, with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard. "Miss Jameson, Deputy Westfield," Judge Willis greeted them. "Allow me to introduce Mr. James Thornton, United States Attorney for the Arizona Territory." Olivia felt a momentary alarm. Was this an ambush of some kind? But the judge's next words reassured her. "Mr. Thornton has reviewed your father's case at my request, including the documents you provided. He has some news I believe you'll want to hear." The attorney stepped forward, his expression grave but kind. "Miss Jameson, I've spent the day examining the evidence you brought to Judge Willis. I've also taken the liberty of interviewing several witnesses, including the bank clerk who processed the drafts your father issued to Robert Hollister." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "Based on this evidence, I am prepared to state officially that your father, Thomas Jameson, was wrongfully convicted. The documents clearly establish that he purchased the horses legally and had legitimate business arrangements for their sale. Olivia felt her knees weaken. After weeks of desperate flight, of clinging to her belief in her father's innocence, despite the territory's judgment against him, to hear it confirmed by the highest legal authority in Arizona was overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't thank me, Miss Jameson," Thornton replied seriously. "What happened to your father was a grave miscarriage of justice, one that demands rectification." He glanced at Judge Willis before continuing. "To that end, I have issued a warrant for the arrest of Robert Hollister on charges of perjury, fraud, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." "He's been arrested?" Owen asked, clearly surprised by the speed of developments. "Not yet," Judge Willis answered. "The warrant was delivered to Sheriff Davis in Prescott an hour ago. However," he exchanged a meaningful look with the attorney. "However," Thornton continued, "we have reason to believe that Davis may have warned Hollister. My sources indicate Hollister left his ranch unexpectedly this afternoon, destination unknown." Olivia felt a surge of anger. "So he escapes justice after all?" "Not necessarily," Thornton countered. "I've telegraphed all territorial officials with instructions to apprehend him. His description has been distributed to law enforcement across Arizona, New Mexico, and southern Colorado. He won't find it easy to disappear." "And if he crosses into Mexico?" Owen asked, voicing the concern Olivia had immediately thought of. "We have arrangements with authorities in Sonora as well," Thornton assured them. "This is not merely a local matter, Deputy Westfield. The territorial government takes corruption very seriously, especially when it results in the execution of an innocent man." Judge Willis cleared his throat. "There is another matter to discuss," he said, addressing Olivia directly. "Your father's property. With his conviction now invalidated, his estate reverts to you as his sole heir. The ranch, the cattle, everything that was seized by the territory will be returned." Olivia had barely considered this aspect of clearing her father's name. The ranch, her childhood home, the place where generations of Jamesons had raised cattle, would be hers again. "How soon?" she asked, practical concerns surfacing through her emotional response. "The legal paperwork will take some time," Thornton admitted, "but I see no reason why you couldn't return to the property immediately. I'll assign a deputy U.S. Marshal to accompany you to ensure there are no difficulties with the current caretakers." Owen spoke up. "Hollister's men are still there, a skeleton crew," Willis confirmed. "The property hasn't been officially transferred yet. These things take time, fortunately in this case." Thornton addressed Owen directly. "Your actions in this matter have been noted, Deputy Westfield, while your methods were unorthodox. Your commitment to justice is commendable." "Thank you, sir," Owen replied formally, "but Miss Jameson deserves the credit. She's the one who preserved the evidence and risked everything to bring it forward." Thornton nodded acknowledgement. "Indeed, which brings me to a final point." He reached into his coat and withdrew an official-looking document. "This is a formal apology from the territorial government for the wrongful execution of Thomas Jameson. It includes a statement clearing his name completely and acknowledging the miscarriage of justice that occurred." He handed the document to Olivia, who took it with trembling hands. "There will also be financial compensation," Thornton continued. "No amount can replace your father, of course, but the territory recognizes its obligation to make what amends it can." "I don't know what to say," Olivia admitted, overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events. "No response is necessary," Judge Willis assured her. "Justice delayed is regrettable, but justice denied is intolerable. We're simply doing what should have been done from the beginning, ensuring the truth is recognized." The meeting concluded shortly thereafter, with arrangements made for Olivia to meet the deputy marshal the following morning for the journey to her father's ranch. As they prepared to leave, Judge Willis drew Owen aside for a private word, while Thornton offered Olivia his personal condolences on her loss. The ride back to the cottage was quiet, both Olivia and Owen absorbed in the implications of what they had just learned. Only when they were safely inside, with the door closed against the night, did Olivia give full voice to her feelings. "He's exonerated," she said, tears finally breaking through the composure she had maintained throughout the meeting. "My father's name is clear." Owen crossed to her without hesitation, taking her hands in his. "As it should be," he said firmly. "Your father would be so proud of what you've accomplished, Olivia." "We accomplished it," she corrected, looking up at him through her tears. "I wouldn't have made it this far without you, Owen." "I might not have made it at all." His expression softened, his hands tightening around hers. "You're stronger than you know. You would have found a way." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but I'm grateful I didn't have to find out." She withdrew one hand to wipe away her tears, embarrassed by the display of emotion. "What did Judge Willis say to you?" "Before we left." Owen hesitated, then seemed to decide on honesty. "He offered me a position Deputy U.S. Marshal for the Northern Arizona District. Said they need men with knowledge of the territory and a commitment to justice regardless of who's involved." "That's wonderful," Olivia said sincerely. "Will you accept?" "I'm considering it," Owen replied, his expression thoughtful. "It's good work, important work, but... He met her eyes directly. "But it would mean traveling constantly with little opportunity for the kind of life I've been thinking about lately." There was something in his gaze, a question unasked but present nonetheless. Olivia felt her heart quicken in response. "What kind of life is that?" she asked softly. Owen took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "The kind with roots, a home, perhaps, someone to share it with." The words hung between them, full of possibility. Olivia was acutely aware of his hand still holding hers, of the warmth and strength they conveyed. "That sounds like a good life," she said carefully. "One worth pursuing." "I think so too," Owen agreed, his voice low. "Olivia, these past days, getting to know you, seeing your courage, your determination." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I know this isn't the proper time with everything that's happened, but I find myself drawn to you in ways I didn't expect." Olivia felt a rush of warmth at his confession. "It's not just you," she admitted. "I've felt it too, this connection between us." Relief washed over his features, followed by a cautious joy. "I don't want to presume," he said. "You have your father's ranch to reclaim, your life to rebuild. But if there might be a place for me in that future someday." "Owen," Olivia interrupted gently, "my father always said that life is too short and too uncertain to delay happiness when you find it." She squeezed his hands. "I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I know I want you to be part of it." His smile then was like sunrise breaking across the mountains, slow at first, then brilliant and transformative. Without words, he drew her closer, his intent clear in his eyes. Olivia met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that held promise, tenderness, and the shared understanding of two people who had faced danger together and emerged stronger for it. When they parted, Owen kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Whatever happens next," he murmured, "we face it together." "Together," Olivia agreed, the word feeling right in ways she couldn't fully express. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the weather itself was celebrating the vindication of Thomas Jameson. Olivia and Owen met the deputy marshal, a taciturn man named Garrett, at the appointed time, and set out for the ranch that had been her childhood home. The journey took most of the day, the familiar landscape stirring memories at every turn. As they crested the final rise and the ranch house came into view, a sturdy two-story structure surrounded by cottonwoods, Olivia felt a complex mix of emotions. Joy at returning, grief for her father's absence, determination to honor his legacy. The current caretakers, 3 of Hollister's men, were surprised by their arrival, but offered no resistance when the marshal presented his official documents. They departed within the hour, leaving Olivia once more in possession of her birthright. "It needs work," she observed as they walked through the house, noting the neglect that had accumulated in the months since her father's arrest. "But it's still home." Owen moved beside her, his presence a steady comfort as she reacquainted herself with each room, each memory. "We can have it back in shape before winter," he said, the casual "we" not escaping her notice. The marshal departed after ensuring all was in order, promising to return in a few days with the formal property documents. Left alone, Olivia and Owen stood on the front porch as evening approached, looking out over the ranch that stretched before them, pastures, corrals, the distant line of mountains that marked the horizon. "What happens now?" Owen asked, his shoulder brushing against hers. Olivia considered the question, thinking of all that had transpired, all that might yet be. "Now we begin again," she said simply. "The ranch needs rebuilding, the herd restocking. There's so much to do." "Together?" Owen asked, the word carrying all the weight of his feelings for her. Olivia turned to face him, seeing in his eyes the same hope, the same certainty she felt in her own heart. "Together," she confirmed, sealing the promise with a kiss as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. In the months that followed, news reached them of Robert Hollister's capture attempting to cross into Mexico. He was returned to the territory to face justice, a justice that, while it could not bring Thomas Jameson back, ensured no other innocent would suffer the same fate at Hollister's hands. Owen declined the marshal's position, choosing instead to partner with Olivia in rebuilding the Jameson ranch. His knowledge of cattle and the land proved invaluable as they worked side by side to restore what had been lost and create something new in its place. Their wedding that autumn was a small affair, attended by Judge Willis, Samuel Parker, who traveled from Cottonwood Springs for the occasion, and Owen's father Marcus, who came from Colorado to meet the woman who had captured his son's heart. As winter gave way to spring, the ranch flourished under their joint care. New calves strengthened the herd, fresh paint brightened the house, and the Jameson name once more became synonymous with fair dealing and quality stock throughout the territory. 1 year to the day after their first meeting at the river crossing, Owen and Olivia found themselves at that same spot, the water now gentle and clear in the early morning light. They had ridden out at dawn to mark the anniversary in their own way, remembering how far they had come from that desperate moment. "It's hard to believe it was only a year ago," Olivia remarked, dismounting near the bank where she had once fought for her life against the current. "It feels like another lifetime. In some ways it was," Owen agreed, joining her at the water's edge. "We were different people then." "Were we?" Olivia wondered. "Or did those circumstances simply reveal who we truly were all along?" Owen considered this, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps a bit of both. The challenges changed us, but they also uncovered what was already there: your courage, your determination. Your loyalty," Olivia added softly. "Your sense of justice." He smiled, taking her hand in his, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the past year. "Either way, I'm grateful for that river crossing, however dangerous it was. It brought us together." Olivia leaned against his shoulder, watching the sunrise reflect golden light across the water. Sometimes the most difficult crossings lead us exactly where we need to be. Owen nodded agreement, then turned to her with a mischievous light in his eyes that she had come to treasure. "Want to cross again, for old time's sake?" Without the bounty hunters and flood waters, it hardly seems sporting, Olivia teased. "True," Owen conceded with a laugh. "Though I wouldn't mind an excuse to hold you close again." "As if you need an excuse," she replied, turning into his embrace. They stood together at the river's edge as dawn painted the sky in delicate hues of pink and gold. The water flowed peacefully now, its surface catching the morning light like scattered diamonds. Owen urged his horse forward into the shallows, reaching back to offer his hand to Olivia. As she guided Penny alongside his mount, their fingers interlaced with the same certainty they had found in each other. The river parted gently around the horse's legs as they waded into the crossing. Midway through, where the current had once nearly claimed Olivia's life, Owen halted, his eyes finding hers with a warmth that still made her heart skip. "I love you, Olivia Westfield," he said simply, the words carrying over the soft murmur of the water. "And I love you," she replied, the declaration as true and clear as the morning around them. Owen laughed then, the sound of pure happiness echoing across the river. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant for her alone. "I won't let go." And as they continued across the river toward the future they had built together, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that he never would.